Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here and talking about encounter with God. Do you know what? I just had a sense just there within the worship and just a kind of a feeling that I just wanted to share of like, isn't our God great? And I just wanted to say, isn't our God great? You know, do you feel it? Do you feel that? I feel it. I feel it here. And I can't wait to share about the encounters and some of my experiences of encountering God as well this evening. I really hope we get something from it and we walk out of here wanting to encounter more of God's great love because he's got so much to give us. If we can pick up in Mark 1, verse 32 to 39, it's going to be the passage that's going to be the central part of the talk for this evening. It goes like this. That evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. And then it goes on to Jesus prays in a solitary place. In verse 35, it says, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him, they exclaimed, everyone is looking for you. Jesus replied, let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. So he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in the synagogues and driving out demons. I don't know about you, but we've been doing these practicing the way for many weeks now and different series along the way. And of course, it's taken from this, the rule of life. And at the moment, we're just closing out now a whole series on solitude. And of course, we had Laura come to us and talk about the quiet place. Then we had the encounter with ourselves, and then encounter with the enemy last week with Si. And today, it's all around encounter with God. About a couple of weeks ago, I sat down to start thinking about writing this talk. And the thing that I was struck with, and I just wanted to share, I asked myself this question: am I practicing solitude? And I wonder whether you've done that over the last few weeks as you've been listening to the different talks. Because really, these are very much about practicing. It's about us leaving here and putting these principles, the things that we've heard and we're hearing, into practice and copying, really, the ministry of Jesus and what he shows us. And we see that vividly tonight in this verse. For me, in my world, I started a new job about 4 weeks ago. It was a promotion in the company that I currently work for, and I've got to be honest, it's been pretty full on. So you chuck in the mixing pot to write a talk within the first 4 weeks. I think people say starting a new job, moving house. You might chuck in marriage and children into the hardest things in life. And here we are, with this talk right in the mix of that. And I found it tough, in the last few weeks to find solitude because it's been so different, my kind of world has as such. But I spent a moment just to look back over the last few weeks. And what I found actually when I was thinking about that is that I've leaned in the Lord more during this time, that I've needed the Lord more than probably ever, and I've counted on him more than ever. And about 2 weeks ago, I go to a life group here in St. Mike's, and we meet on Tuesday evening. And we're a family life group, so it's the men meet one week and the ladies meet the next week. And the reason for that is we've all got young children and we can't all leave because we can't all get babysitters every week. So it really works. And it was about a month before this in particular period that I felt like the kind of prayer team, we needed some prayer. We need to spend some time together and rest in the Lord. And it was about 2 weeks again into this role, so everything kind of happened at once. And I'm sat there and I get a text on WhatsApp, and it's the group saying, "Oh, we've just come to the end of a series. We've got like a empty week. Does anyone have anything they want to give?" And I think I've mentioned it before, I get a bit of a shove from the Lord, and it felt like a bit of a hit in the ribs. And I said before I could say no, I'd text and said, "Yeah, I'll do it. I'll take the evening." And it was one of those where at the time I was going to bed about 7:30 in the night because I was shattered with a new job. And it was something I really didn't really need in my life. But I felt like the Lord pushed me and say, "Do it." The reality is, when I took the time then, I literally, on the day that it was due to meet the life group, I took 20 minutes. So this wasn't like a long period. I just took 20 minutes and I took myself off to a quiet place, okay? I took myself off to a quiet place and I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, I just haven't got the time. I haven't got the space for my mental space is pretty limited right now. And I need you to kind of give me a few thoughts and feelings. And with that, some kind of inspiration came of kind of words and prayers and so on. That I then was able to take to that actual meeting. It was interesting because as we did it, we lit a large candle. We had it in the centre of the room. I said to the guys, we kind of met in the room. We're quite a bunch of rugby talking kind of guys. And I said to them, guys, can we turn the lights out? And I joke you not, they all looked at me as if I was mad. One of them looked at me as, almost like the eyes of like, are you having a midlife crisis? So we had a candle and I lit the candle in the middle. And I said, I just want us to focus and I want us to have some real time of quiet. So we can encounter the Lord this evening. At the end of that meeting, a couple of the guys said it was just what they needed. And I begged the question about what did we need? Why did we need that moment with the Lord, with the candle, with that prayer time? And the reason, of course, is because we need to encounter God. But first, we need to stop. We need to be willing and open to sound out the noise of the everyday life and take time to encounter Jesus, to encounter solitude. What I love about the Bible verse today is that Jesus modeled it, and it shows us right here in this scripture, in this verse. And we've got it again up on the wall, and I'm just going to pick out a few verses now. We read in verses 32 to 34 that Jesus had a mammoth day of ministry. It says people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons. I don't know about anyone else. I've done an odd bit of ministry time at the end of one of these sessions. And I tell you what, it wears you out. It's pretty tiring. It's brilliant. It's the most amazing thing you'll ever do. But it's also very tiring. And sometimes you walk away from that and you think, I need to lie down and take it steady. And I just wonder about Jesus here. He's just done the most amazing things. And I just wonder, what he did. And of course, it tells us that now. And I think if I was in that scenario, I probably would have had a lie in the following day. I would have gone for brunch and I wouldn't have been too great at much else. But in verse 35, it says, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. I love that Jesus woke up early and he went to a secret place where no one knew he was, or in the early stages, no one knew he was, a hiding place where the disciples had to look for him. Jesus needed to spend time in solitude to refuel, to energize, so that he could come back again and preach once again to the other villages. It says in verse 38, let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. In this story, we see the pattern of Jesus teaching us, and that is to retreat, to take time out, to have time in solitude, and then to return. He goes into a solitary place to encounter God, and he comes back. He comes back with a heightened sense of clarity around his identity, who he is and who he is called to be and what he is called to do next. And I love that. I just love that in this passage, that Jesus himself, needed to go away into this place to hear from God, to know where to take himself next, that calling of that he should move on to the next village. Let us go somewhere else. As apprentices of Jesus, are we following this pattern? This principle that Jesus has clearly given to us in this passage? Do we retreat? Do we go to that solitary place? Do we spend time with him? Do we recharge and come back to love and to serve? I want to share another experience about solitude. This is about practicing the way, and some of the experiences I hope are really helpful. And this one specifically is about retreating. A number of years ago, I went on to a retreat to a rest, and I felt like I just needed a bit of rest and time out. And so I did the classic thing. I got out the phone, I Googled the best retreats for a man in rest, and bing, up comes this abbey right here, Plusgarden Abbey in Scotland, in a place called Elgin, would you believe? And over a period of time, over a couple of weeks, I started praying about it, and I thought, yeah, I feel like this is from the Lord, right? I'm going to do this. So I jumped in my car, I booked on, and I went there, and I drove up, and it's a long way, let me tell you. If anyone's been up there, it really is. And what I was met with the most amazing Benedictine monks down at the bottom right-hand side there, and I had an amazing time. No phone. There was no signal there. You can kind of get that from the picture, right? You're in the middle of absolute nowhere, to be honest. No books to read, just the Bible. No emails, nothing. Just me, the countryside, and God, and an encounter with the living God in Jesus. I'm going to tell you, I arrived there, and I got to that kind of, I parked my car, you have to walk, it's just down the way, and you have to walk up and join them. And I went there, and I felt in the first kind of hour, I felt like shaky. I'm going to be honest, shaky. I felt nervy. I didn't feel right. I felt unsettled. And do you know what? I was just taking some time. And then as I spent time with the Lord, listening to the Gregorian chants these guys sing like on the hour pretty much, I felt like I was able to kind of calm down, persevere through, and a real sense of kind of God's voice feeling in my heart, and a sense of peace. For me, in this place, I experienced freedom and solitude quite profoundly, and a real feeling of understanding who I am and who I'm not at this time, and who I'm called to be in Christ. I had an amazing encounter with Jesus while I was there. There weren't fireworks. There wasn't this whole epiphany moment like I think some of you know I've had, where I fell over. It wasn't like that. It was just peace. It was just serenity, the word that Si gave earlier, and it was amazing. And I've been back since because it was so amazing. I went back, and it was funny. I met one of the monks in one of the gardens that's there, and they of course work the ground and everything. And he said to me, "You've been before, haven't you?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, I recognise you." And he goes to me, "You're not thinking about becoming a monk, are you?" And with that, I was like, no. And me being witty, I said, "I value the little hair I've got too much," which he laughed at very much because the monks have their heads shaved. So we had a bit of fun, and they were great guys. I'm not saying that we all need to go and live in a monastery. I'm not, or we need to go to a nunnery to experience these things. That's not what I'm getting at. But what I'm saying this is sometimes when we spend time intentionally, or we put time in intentionally going to seek God and going to encounter God, then Jesus really does show up and meet with us. I wanted to give a shout out to one other place because I think this is really helpful when we look at practicing the way. And this is a place called Harn Hill. Some of you might know it here. It's an amazing retreat house. It's only 45 minutes away. I really want to give it a shout out because it's just a beautiful, beautiful place to go. It's only up the road, and if anyone thinks or feels anything about either the place, then do come and speak to me after. They're a Christian healing centre, very, very good for healing, but also do lots of personal ministries and retreats there as well. And I really recommend it to anybody wholeheartedly. They're wonderful people, and you'll be met with so much love if you do go there. In Matthew 11, verses 28 to 30, it says this: "Come to me who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." In verse 35, in the passage for tonight, Jesus got up. He left the house and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. If Jesus needed this practice, if he's telling us he needed a practice of going to a solitary place, to a quiet place, then how much more do we need this to live as disciples for him in the world? We need to retreat to advance, and we need to take in the time that God's got to find our inner identity and then to find our calling so we can live out God's purposes in our life. I want to share one more thing before we draw to a close around encounter. As a business leader, I struggle with time. I'm sure many people can resonate with that. I have 2 children, a wife, countless activities. I go on, a taxi service every weekend, different things, and a relentless work calendar. And I'm consciously asked, what's your call on this? What's your decision on this? What do you think about that? And to be honest, there's often times where I sit there and I think, I don't know. I don't have the answer. And, I've had that many times over the last 4 weeks as people have been asking me to make calls and decisions. And the thing I've been struggling most, I think, in that is actually clarity of thought. And clarity of thought is actually probably what I need most within the job role or in this time. And as I was praying a while back, I felt like God said, spend time with me and I'll show you the way. I'm going to say that again. Spend time with me and I'll show you the way. And I wonder if that's a word here for somebody else tonight, that perhaps God's saying to you, spend time with me and I'll show you the way. I decided to build on this actually within my workplace, and I've done this. I did this in my last job, and I'm doing it again now. And on a quarterly basis in my diary, I put out a work day, and I'm very lucky. I manage my own diary, so I know this won't be right for everyone, but it's been wonderful for me. I manage a day in my diary where I put out. I call it quarterly business review, and I put prayer, and I have a whole day where I take myself off to somewhere quite unique, and I pray about my work, about my workplace, about the people that are in my workplace, and about the decisions and the business that I'm running. And for me, it's been just one of the most amazing kind of life-affirming things that I've done in kind of recent times, with no phone, no email, nothing. And I can safely say some of my best inspirations have come through that time of quiet. The reason I share that is because I think we need to find time for the Lord in our busy schedules, right? We need to come and meet us and help us to advance. And I know that people here won't maybe have the luxuries that I do, that I can block something like that out. But maybe you can do it at a lunch break. Maybe you could take off a day off once a year, once a quarter, once every half year to spend with the Lord. But it just comes back to that point about being intentional with God. That's pretty profound and so wonderful. I wanted to share one more thing about just hearing God's voice through all this time, and in particular when we're in those times of solitude. And I had that prayer day very recently, just last week, actually. Would you believe? Amazing how it fell. And as I was praying, I felt like 1 Samuel 3 verses 10 come to my mind, and it says this: "Speak, O Lord, for your servant is listening." And I don't know whether anyone here has meditated on that kind of prayer, but I really recommend it as a scripture. And speak, O Lord, and I change it to your son is listening. Speak, O Lord, for your son is listening. Speak, O Lord, for your servant is listening. And wait patiently in expectation, because God, as Si said earlier about the soft voice of the Lord, comes and speaks to us and gives us inspiration. I hope this is helpful. It's a piece about practicing the way and us, ways in which we can go away from here and actually practice and live this out. If you've heard something tonight that resonates, that sticks, I would say pray about it. Step out in faith and schedule a quarterly prayer day if you can. A lunch break, where you dedicate the time to God. A retreat later this year, or a time of solitude and rest within your life group. Whatever that looks like, whatever that fits for you, I recommend to try it and do it and see how solitude can become part of your life, and that encounter with God can be life affirming. We should become apprentices to the Lord and journey with him. And through that, we encounter the Lord and our identity and our calling. In verse 35, it said, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. The question is really, what is your solitary place? Where do you go to encounter the Lord and encounter the living God. I want to close by doing something here, and I'm going to we're going to put on a little a song in a moment, and it's going to come up, and I want us to still ourselves. I'm going to play one of the monks from Pluscard Abbey for 2 minutes. And what I want us to do is I want us to listen to the song, but I also want us to get in a place where, as best we possibly can, to have a sense of solitude here, like have a rest and relaxation moment just for 2 minutes. So whatever that looks like for you, try and get comfortable where you are, because we're going to do that right now to press into the Lord and hope to start this encounter with the Lord as we then go into a ministry and obviously some more time of music. We're going to pray that song in a second, but I just want to pray this again over us, right? Before we go in. It's 1 Samuel 3, verse 10. Speak, O Lord, for your servant is listening. Speak, O Lord, for your servant is listening. Speak, O Lord, for your servant is listening.